Just let me know when we're live and we'll kick it off. All right, good evening, everybody. This is a special meeting of the Waterville City Council. It is streaming online, and just a reminder, if the link goes down, if you're watching and it goes down, we are checking our emails all the time, and just wait a little bit, refresh the link, we will update that, and if we know it's down, we'll try to stop all business and wait until it gets back up. So, but hopefully we won't have those problems tonight. Hopefully this will be a smooth meeting. Thanks for attending virtually. It's not listed on here, but I'll ask for a disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there anybody who feels they have a conflict of interest with a vote that they'll take tonight? Seeing as none, I will start. Rick says he doesn't want to do it tonight, so I'm going to start, and I'll lead you in the pledge. So. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, new business. First up, we have Resolution 138, 2020.
Resolution providing for declaring an emergency to preserve the public health and safety. Whereas the City Council will not have passed a budget for fiscal year 2020-21 by July 1st, 2020, and whereas there is no spending authority for the city and school department operations after July 1st, 2020, and whereas certain city functions are essential in preserving the health and safety of city's residents, now therefore be it hereby resolved that an emergency exists as defined in Article 4, Section 9 of the City Charter.
Move to adopt.
And second.
Is there any discussion? Mike, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. As some of you will remember from prior years, we have to take action on this resolution and the following order in order to go beyond July 1st without a budget. So first is the declaration of an emergency, and the second is the emergency funding for city and schools for whatever time period it takes for us to get to another vote on the budget.
Okay. If I take a second, it's because I have to scan this whole screen with a lot of faces to make sure there's no hands up. So seeing as there are none, I will ask for a roll call.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Right. Next is Order 139, 2020.
An order providing for emergency funding for city and school operations. Whereas the City Council in Resolution 138-2020 declared that an emergency exists as defined in Article 4, Section 9 of the City Charter. Now, therefore, be it hereby ordered by the City Council of the City of Waterville, acting as the municipal officers, as follows. That spending authority from July 1, 2020 is authorized until such time as a new city budget is approved with said funding levels to be as provided for in the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Sarah, if I may interrupt, I'm getting a note from someone who may want to call in a question. Could you give the number for folks at home to call in?
Yes, it's 680-4211.
4211. Thanks so much. Any discussion on this item of the agenda? Mr. Frankie.
Oh, as I see this, we're going to just operate with what we've talked about so far this year, and until such time as we finally make a final vote on the budget. Is that right, Mike?
I'm sorry, Counselor, I didn't catch everything. Your question was about how long does it last?
Well, both. We're working on the budget items that we've been talking about for the past several months.
Right.
And we're going to use those until such time as we make a final budget, the final budget pass.
Yes, this will carry us through until the budget passes, whenever that is. Remember, it's an order, so it takes 2 votes. So this would be, the same order will be on your agenda for July 7th.
Actually, Mike, it's an emergency order, so it just takes the 1 vote to pass.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Well done. You're right. And I think this will be the 3rd time in 4 years we've done this, 3rd time in 5 years.
No. Well,
What? Who's talking?
no, I just say, well, I mean, it happens. I mean, we want to get it right. You know what I mean? So I mean, that's why we have this in place.
I don't, usually we're waiting for the state.
Right.
It's always been that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So, all right. Is everybody ready for a roll call? One last scan. I'll take a roll call. Sarah, please.
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Mayu,
Yes.
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Next up is Order 140, 2020.
In order providing for the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount of $3,935,000 for capital projects. Be it ordered by the Council of the City of Waterville, acting as the municipal officers as follows. That the projects on the attached list are hereby approved. That the sum of $3,935,000 is hereby appropriated to fund the project. Said appropriation to include engineering, design costs, construction costs, and any transaction costs related to the financing of the projects. That to meet said appropriation, the city manager and treasurer, acting pursuant to the charter of the City of Waterville and the provisions of 30-A MRSA Section 5772, are hereby authorized to issue general obligation securities of the City of Waterville, including temporary notes in the anticipation of the sale thereof, in an aggregate principal amount of $3,935,000, and the discretion to fix the dates, maturity, interest rates, denominations, place of payment, call for redemption, with or without premium, form, and other details of said securities, including execution and delivery of said securities on behalf of the City of Waterville, and to provide for the sale thereof, is hereby delegated to the city manager and treasurer.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay. And I'm going to open this for discussion, and I'm going to kind of leave it open because once we start sharing screens, I can't really see everybody unless I'm just constantly flickering back and forth. So try to be polite and speak one at a time.
Start with Mike.
Sure.
I'm assuming everyone can see the list of bond items on the screen. I practiced my sharing this afternoon, so I think I've got it. So there are 5 city departments that have submitted requests: the airport, police, public works, parks and rec, and fire. We've gone over some of these quite a bit already. The Main Street bond is one item that's in public works. That's the $1 million that you see here. We've talked about the pool, which is under Parks and Rec, which is $1 million here. The oldest one, or the one that's been around the longest, is the Trafton Road reconstruction at $500,000. I'm really hoping the council can take one vote anyway, even if there's still uncertainty on some of these items, because it takes 2 votes for final approval. And you can take as long as you want to take the second vote. You could stretch that into 2 or 3 meetings after tonight if you wanted to. And I'm just going to suggest that maybe if people feel comfortable, we might be able to take a vote on those items that we are in agreement on, and for others that might still need more information, that could wait until the July 7th meeting. But I'll open myself up to any questions. The Finance Committee did meet last week and went over these also.
I just want to remind the public that the $1 million bond for the pool is really going towards a several $1 million project that's on top of the $1 million, almost $1 million project we did with the slides a year ago. And I think we need to ask ourselves what we can afford long-term sustainability. I know Matt's kind of working on that. So I'm hoping by the time we take a final vote, we can have a really good discussion about the park rates and how this thing is going to sustain itself, because this is also coming with strings attached that we have to pump $50,000 a year into a pool maintenance fund. And I think that we can barely keep up with the infrastructure we have, including the sidewalks and the streets. I wish I had an extra $1 million going towards those things. Remember, it's kind of open, guys. Claude, you know.
Yes, here's my thoughts are based primarily on the uncertainty of the financial situation that we're in right now. The bonding attaches a fixed payment to the budget. Failure to make the required repayments is not a good option. As I view bonds as an unmovable obstacle if for revenue shortages this year. Since the city is required to balance its budget, revenue shortages will have to be balanced by expenditure reduction. As we've seen over the past several months, a large portion of the city's expenditures are for personnel. As we tie our hands by approving the issuance of bonds with fixed repayment costs, it will mean that budget reduction will likely fall on personnel. To put it simply, I favor putting the interests of the city's hardworking employees ahead of the debt service that comes with borrowing money. Finally, I'd like to say I'm not opposed to the city borrowing money. If the city's financial status next year has stabilized, that will be an appropriate time to revisit bonding, particularly noting that most of the bond requests are for long-term goals that the city may be in a better position to evaluate next year.
Claude, I just want to say real quick that I'm not sure where I am totally on the bond and the amount and things like that, but I really appreciate your perspective and kind of forcing us to stop and think about these things. Very, very important stuff. And I think it's very sound reasoning that you're using. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I saw Sid and then Eric, I think.
Yeah, I'm in the same, even after the Finance Committee, which I was only able to listen in because of my Wi-Fi, but I wanted to express some thoughts with the bond. I do appreciate Mike Roy, you with your manager's request and whittling it down into more appropriate size bond. Obviously, over 7 million was proposed, and we're looking at just under 4. That is more adequate for the city to consume, obviously, from a financial perspective. And I think, Mike, you had the best intentions of doing that. I do have serious questions for some of the line items that are being proposed. I am in agreement with the mayor with the concerns about the pool. It's kind of a mixed situation. A lot of people are chiming into me about wanting it, and there's a lot of people on the equilibrium of saying that, you know, how much more can we throw into there to make it a reasonable asset for the city. You know, we definitely have all the confidence in the world with Matt Skehan looking at this and trying to whittle away the cost effective of the pool. I really believe in what he can do, but I am very concerned about that. As what the mayor has said, as I can see, not only in my ward, but there's so many wards in the city where there's streets and infrastructure and sidewalks, total disrepair with weeds growing up and breaking apart. Taxpayers like to see roads and sidewalks. They walk, especially during this pandemic, taxpayers are walking more than they ever have. We probably have the most healthy segment of Waterville in all of creation because there's a lot of people walking around now and they're noticing this stuff. I get a lot of email about that as well. So it's a concern. And I know it was for you, Mike, capital improvement fund and trying to find, allocate money to going to paving roads and taking care of sidewalks. I know that's been a concern for you over the years, and you've always said that we never have enough money for that. So again, that's my perspective on that, and along with the mayor's. I do believe that we really have to seriously look at these line items and really consider their fortitude as far as including them. And I do agree with Councillor Frankie about the, take a serious look at everything, because again, the repayments on these bonds are something to be concerned about, and the revenue coming in is to be concerned about every year. So those are my thoughts on the bonding. I'm completely unsure of where I'm going to go on this because of the fact that I do have some serious concerns.
Okay. Eric, I suppose next.
I just want to make sort of an overall response to what Claude had to say. And then also I maybe suggest that we take the discussion department by department, so we don't just sort of bounce around, and we can focus on, what we want in and what we want out. But as far as the overall, the idea of bonding this year, I may have a different opinion if these were sort of standalone projects that the city was doing. But in this case, a lot of the money that we're looking at borrowing is, our share of a much larger project. For example, the money for the build grant, $1 million towards an $11 million project. And if we don't borrow the money this year, I think it honestly basically blows up the build grant because we need to have our ducks in a row by the fall. And so the question is, do we want to, not just do we want to borrow $1 million, it's do we want to blow that project up altogether? And do we want to, we're still going to have projects we need to do downtown, whether we move forward with the build grant or not, which likely in the long run will cost us just as much money as we're going to put into that project. And we're in the same situation with the pool. Right now we have a commitment from an outside source for $2.3 million towards that project. If we go back to them and tell them that we've decided we don't want to borrow the money this year and we're going to wait till next year, there's no guarantee that money will still be there next year. And then you also have a similar scenario up at the airport where we have a federal grant to repave the taxiway, and they're paying 95% of the project and our share is only 5%. So again, if we don't borrow the money, then who knows if that money will be there next year. I know the grants are pretty competitive for that. And so I just think there's more than just looking at the bond itself. There's the matching money involved. The $4 million we're going to borrow is actually going to net us another neighborhood of $12 to $13 million. And so I think it's important that we're moving forward with these having been at it before when we went through a financial crisis. I know instinct is sometimes to sort of, go to the corner and be very, very cautious. But the fact of the matter is we are going to come out the other side of this, and we want to continue to make prudent investments that, will make sure that the city continues to move forward. We've spent the last 10 years catching up on capital improvements that were delayed and ignored for the previous 10 to 20 years. We don't want to paint future councils into a corner by not, being timely about our borrowing. And that includes things like the public works equipment, which, the older the equipment gets, the more it costs us to maintain it, the more it's broken down, the more we lose productivity. And so, we need to stay on top of those types of things. And I think with that, I've probably spoken enough, so I'll let.
And can I piggyback onto Eric? I want to agree with, I do support the build grant. And as far as the public pool goes, I've only heard support from my constituents, only positive things. And it seems like a no-brainer to take this time while the pool has to be closed to really revamp it and make those improvements. I know that, and specifically, personally, I'm definitely for it.
I'm okay with it if we get it so it's not so heavily subsidized by tax dollars, because what we're doing right now is putting it in a position to be more subsidized.
Right.
Well, asking us to put forward even more. And you know, it's like with the Riverwalk, we have to at some point, at least, regardless if you go forward with it or not, it's a valuable conversation to have, to say we need to look at all of the infrastructure needs of the city and decide what can we truly afford this in the long run, and if we really want some of these things, what changes do we need to make in order to keep them and make them more sustainable? I think that's
a conversation we're already having too, with Matt Skian's plans for how to earn more money for the Waterville Public Pool specifically.
Bobby has got something.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, like I understand like everything, like what they're saying about like borrowing the money this year, but I find that it's going to be an investment for a long term. And I feel like it is going to bring revenue in. And I saw some of the plans that Matt has. And I think with a little bit of tweaking, I think there's definitely a really good revenue for Waterville. Because as a mom, when I look for places to go with my kids, I look for somewhere that has a pool and a water slide. People are going to want to come here for that.
I'd like to follow up on that for a minute with what Eric said about the road reconstruction on Main Street. Although I think the council's already indicated its approval, it's an investment. The $1 million is for 10 million additional dollars. And those 10 million, $11 million are really going to pay dividends in the future with an increased tax base. So that's another example of some of these investments having a return. Hard to make a total return on the pool, but we're working right now to finalize that business plan for the pool. And I think in the next couple of days, we'll have something to present to all of you that you can look at. And so when we talk again on July 7th with the pool, I think you'll be able to see that although it's not going to be a total break-even situation, it's going to be an improvement over where we are today.
Mayor, I do have a couple of phone calls that came in regards to the bond item.
Sorry, I was muted. I need to make sure that everybody that wants to speak from the council has had a chance to speak, and then we'll...
I would like to speak.
Okay, Rick.
So I've been to a few of the finance committees. We've talked a lot about the pool. We already know how I stand on the bill grant $1 million, so I'm not going to rehash that. In a rare instance, I actually agree with Councilor Frankie. We still don't know what the economic impact of COVID is going to do to us. If we can push this off as long as we could, I would be all in favor of that. I'm also interested to see what Matt has come up with for a plan, but anything for a loss on that pool, I'm a no on it. I'm not gonna spend taxpayer dollars to keep flushing money down the drain. Last number that I had heard, we were losing $10,000 to $15,000 a year. That's not a return on investment in my brain. I would love to see a 10% profit margin on that pool to get my approval. That's all I have.
All good stuff to think about, everybody on all sides of this. I appreciate everyone's thoughts. Mike, Roy?
Yep, I don't want to interrupt any other counselor if they have comments, but to follow on what Rick said, there's no city department that pays for itself. Now, I understand a pool is not the same thing as police, fire, or public works. A pool is certainly more of a luxury than a public safety. But there's no city department that pays for itself. Airport, library, any department. There's only one, actually there is one, code enforcement with their issuing permits actually takes in permit fees more than what we spend on code enforcement. But the pool has never paid for itself, and you won't find a municipality in Maine where it does pay for itself. So I understand, Rick, some of what you're saying, but there's no other city department that's judged in that way. Unless you can show us you're going to make a profit, we're going to cancel what service it provides for the citizens.
I just want the sidewalks fixed, man. That's all I want.
Well, say, I believe the pool is actually, in the budget, it shows it losing a little money, but I believe last year it actually came pretty close to breaking even.
We've done that a couple of years, yeah, I think. That's true.
Came close.
I'm just doing a scan, and I think we're ready to read the calls, Sarah.
The first one I have is from Kathy Weeks. She just has a comment. We can't afford this pool, take it out of the bond. And another one from Nancy Sanford from Ward 1. Regarding the $50,000 for the pool, has the conversations with the Alphon Foundation taken place yet about the amount being less for repairs?
I have started that conversation, but there isn't any conclusion yet. So I can't say anything more than that.
And I just want to remind everybody, particularly those at home, this is going to be the first of 2 votes. We will be back in 2 weeks to have a second vote and a second conversation on this. So we're not finalizing anything.
And Nick, can we just go department by department? So like talk about the airport. And
yeah, I think that's good because from airport down to fire, I think there's a lot of good stuff. And I'm gonna mute, and we'll start with Randy.
Well, actually, can I jump in ahead of Randy?
You're the boss.
Okay, Randy, I'm just going to start it out. I'm going to let you answer the questions. But on the airport, the $300,000 that you see here is really now $100,000, our share, because the project has changed as far as the FAA goes. So fortunately, our share is not 300, it's 100. Now, in this top line, equipment and vehicles, the Finance Committee last week talked about the need for snow removal equipment at the airport. So when I talked with Randy today, he said that that particular piece of equipment, snow removal, has completely gone bad and it needs to be replaced. That number, if we were to plug it in here, would be $450,000. There is a chance that we can get reimbursement through FAA, but that would be 2 or 3 years away. We would reimburse ourselves if we do buy it now. So those were the 2 big things from last week's Finance Committee meeting. This number is changing. That number was a question mark in the top line.
Yeah, and I do want to vouch for Randy on that. I do believe that's a necessity. We have to plow our runways. We have to maintain the airport, and I would be for allocating that with the hope of getting the money back somehow through grants.
So that number, instead of 300,000, if we do plug a number in here, would be 550. Anything, Randy, I missed key on that?
Maybe before Randy chimes in, can I just have my questions and then maybe he can speak. So my questions, Randy, would be 1, is it feasible to buy that as a used piece of equipment? 2, is it possible to contract out those services for a couple of years until we go out to bond again to get us through?
Eric, we would not be eligible for reimbursement if we were to purchase a used piece of equipment. So we would be on board for the full cost of doing that with no hope of reimbursement. In terms of hiring it out, I think one, we would run into a union issue. And secondly, I believe it would cost us a significant amount more to have snow removed from the airport versus us doing it ourselves.
I agree, it probably would in the long term. I'm just saying if we decide, you know, we have to make priorities in this bond, obviously. And so if we decide that's not one of the items in the bond for this year, you're probably looking at waiting 2 years. So I guess the question is, what are the options if the council says, no, we don't want to borrow for snow removal equipment for the airport?
Really tough spot. I know last year and the year before and the year before that, what it's cost us to maintain the blower that we have and the downtime that it takes to repair the specific blower. It makes it so the airport can't receive aircraft, and it also makes it for a significant safety issue, which we would be liable for should anything happen. I hate to have the city put in that position. So it definitely puts me as a director in a very tough spot, both between the FAA and you know, balancing what we need to do as a city.
And Randy, I've seen that snow, I've seen the used snow blower, and it is in really tough shape. So I do sympathize with your plight.
I would like to come and see the existing unit. By all means, stop in, swing by. I can fill you in more about what it is and the amount of snow that we have to remove. You know, I'd like to remind people that the amount of square footage that we have to remove for snow at the airport with our limited staff and our limited equipment is the equivalent of plowing from Kennedy Memorial Drive, the off-ramp from the interstate, curb to curb, the entire length, all the way to Silver Street, all of Silver Street curb to curb, Main Street, all the way from Silver Street to Public Works curb to curb, and the entire concourse curb to curb. So that is a significant amount of snow that we have to remove each storm, and we can't have snowbanks. So it's a significant task that we have to achieve every time it snows, and to have a piece of equipment that can actually assist us in doing that is extremely critical.
So Mike, I wonder if it would be helpful if we take a vote on some of these individual items about whether we want them included in the final bond or not. You want to wait?
I think it would certainly help to focus our discussion at the next meeting. We'd know that some items either are in or out, and that would shorten the list for the next time we meet.
And so you'd be looking right now to change the airport amount from 100 to 550?
That's what Randy's proposal is, right? And I do support the need for the new blower. There's no question after it stopped working last winter, it really made it difficult for him and for the Public Works crew to get the snow off because we not only have to plow it, we have to blow it off the runways, away from the lighting system, the navigation system that lines the edge of the runway.
Okay, so in the interest of moving this ahead, I will offer an amendment to the bond that we change the airport amount from 100,000 to 550,000.
Second.
Any discussion before we take a vote? Okay, I have a vote. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I can mute, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. Randy, out of curiosity, the amount of revenue that you bring in from, you know, let's say November to April, what percentage of that is the overall revenue of the airport?
That's a great question. I don't have those figures directly available at the moment. I can certainly get out to you and get you some of that information. What I can tell you with our snow removal that we do for aircraft, we have invested in equipment that makes us capable of being able to service that. You know, aircraft up to 35 feet in height. And aside from Bangor and Portland being the next closest airports that have that same service, we're it. And we also often see things like UPS come in from other airports when they can't get into facilities such as Rockland. So there's a service aspect to it, and then we have a growing clientele year by year with the knowledge, the equipment that we have for aircraft pricing exists.
So the question I have for you, Randy, is having said my piece about the problems with bonding, having fixed costs in our budget, is there any way that you can figure out to wait until next year to buy your piece of equipment rather than run up a bonding in this fiscal year?
I understand the city's position financially and the concerns surrounding COVID and the undoubtedly uncertain times that we're in. My main concern surrounds safety. If we were to simply just plow the snow off to the side, it obstructs our lights. It upsets the navigational aids that are used by the FAA to land aircraft. And it essentially could close us entirely, being unable to remove the snow. So essentially the position it would put me in is if we don't replace the equipment, the possibility of having to close the airport during the winter certainly is real, or the scenario of having an incident with an aircraft and injuries is real. So what I'm trying to do is mitigate issues.
And can you explain whether we face penalties from the FAA if we close the airport for an extended period of time?
Right. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at when I asked that question. Is it advantageous for us to replace the equipment, or do we lose too much of the revenue to just shut it down for those periods of time and just let people know that, hey, we're not open? Then in the future we can look to purchase the equipment and determine that, yeah, we can be open in the winter, but is that a possibility? I mean, obviously it's a possibility. Anything that we do is a possibility, but what does that do from a revenue perspective if we were to actually, do that once, the first snow, like no, or, through April or,
Two-part answer to that. One, to address Councilor Thomas's point, we would face penalty, and it wouldn't be necessarily in the form of a fine, but it would be in the form of a violation of our obligations to fulfill the grants. So we provide certain assurances to the FAA that we will maintain the airport when we're given federal money. It's under the Airport Improvement Program. So we are required to mow the airport, for example. We're required to repair the lights. We're required to remove the snow. So we would risk losing funds in the future. We are in good standing with the FAA right now to jeopardize that, especially with an upcoming project for a taxiway. And then to answer Councilor Morris's question, it's more, yes, the airport does cost money to run. We offset a lot of our expense. We do have full-time employee, we do have part-time employees, so we could lose some good people if we were closed, or those costs are set. But secondly to that is the commerce that is generated by the airport, the businesses that come in and frequent the area, and as well as we're a UPS hub. So we see freight come in and out every single day. And if we close, that would certainly jeopardize our standing with UPS and the development that they have on Industrial Drive.
Randy, I just chiming in here, and being on the advisory board with you, I can't even imagine. I think it's beyond imagination closing the airport for any length of time. The airport is a vital asset to the city of Waterville and surrounding towns and the local economy. And again, for a lot of business entrepreneurs that come in and visit us back and forth and just to do business. And we're in a tough fight with competing with the city of Augusta, as you've told us, for commerce and for flights and for competing. If Waterville is going to be sustainability and put on the map and be the talk of the capital of Augusta about revitalization and spreading out and really being an economic force in the state of Maine, the airport is paramount to that, and we have to protect that asset.
Well, how paramount is it in February? You know, I mean, if we're talking about we're gonna, you know, everybody's complaining about, well, you know, nobody wants the pool and all these other things, but so we're talking about, you're asking us to spend money, these taxpayers to spend money on equipment that is viable so that UPS can land. Like, I mean, so, you know, have we had a conversation with UPS and say, hey, you know what, you're one of the only reasons we stay open in the winter, because you need to land your plane. Like, can you help us out? Like, we want to be able to do this for you, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, if we're going to have those arguments, you know, straight across the board, then, you know, that's a fair argument to have, and that it's a fair conversation to have. How much commerce are we seeing in the wintertime? And yeah, I mean, if you can go ahead and pull those numbers, then that would be fantastic.
I can speak regarding UPS in terms of what we receive for revenue for them, especially in the winter. They pay about $1,500 a month for heat in our hangar, which actually heats the hangar we keep our snow equipment in. So that offsets our expense to do that. Additionally, they pay, I want to say it's $1,300 a month just in an operating fee. In addition to them, we do have, you know, about 13 privately owned hangars where people do pay, you know, the taxes on the hangars, and they pay the lease rate for that. Where in their leases, we state that we will maintain the runways, the taxiways, and keep them plowed. So we'd actually be in violation of our leases with our tenants, in addition to our grant obligations with the FAA. So I'd hate to see us put in a position where we're risking not only federal money, but we're risking repercussions, you know, based on our leases, including that of our flight school.
And
Well,
just,
I mean, we're risking those monies with all the other items we're talking about too. So, you know, everybody's going to risk.
to put a number on it, just so everyone is clear, you know, borrowing $550,000 for the airport. I mean, the snowplow we would have to finance over 15 years. Their paving would be over 20. But still, you're looking somewhere in the portion of the payment for that part of the debt service, somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $35,000 a year. Is that correct, Mike?
I believe so, yes.
And I do want to just reiterate the fact that the intention is with this equipment to seek reimbursement of 95% by that of the FAA and Maine DOT. Right now, it isn't in our capital improvement list because we are doing the taxiway next year. And then following that, we would have to save 3 years worth of the what's called entitlement money, which is $150,000 a year for us to get reimbursed. So that would be the next following item 3 years out after we do the taxiway. 95% reimbursement of the loader.
And we're still waiting for an opinion on the legality of that, right, Mike? Because I had a question from the Finance Committee about whether we can borrow money, pay for something, and then get reimbursed for that piece of equipment. Because that's
yes,
really...
I talked with Dick Ranigan today. Dick is on the line with us. And what Dick explained to me is that if we get reimbursed 3 years from now for that snow removal equipment, we can take that money and apply it to what we've already paid on debt service for that piece, and then put the remaining amount in a reserve. And that remaining amount gets dedicated each year to paying the debt service on that piece. So we couldn't use the money to buy other stuff, but we could certainly use it to reimburse ourselves for what we already paid out and to help us pay the rest of the debt service.
That's an excellent answer.
Yeah, well, that's the way it would work.
Yeah.
Is that reimbursement a guaranteed reimbursement, or is it an application and wait to see?
It's not a guaranteed reimbursement. We get a certain amount every year. So that amount we would have to bill build up, I think, over a 3-year period of time. We get 150,000 a year. And so we can hold that money, build it up for an expensive piece of equipment or something like paving at the airport. That's a much bigger number. So we're allowed to save up that money and use it for the one big project. They know that we need this snow removal equipment. So there's no.
Just mention that we actually put a grant in for a similar piece of equipment 2 years ago. And what happened after a year-long back and forth between us and the FAA on the grant was that it fell through due to a Buy American clause. The pieces of equipment that we were seeking were either A, too expensive, or B, didn't meet Buy American. And that was the only reason we didn't get the grant. However, last week, the particular piece of equipment that I would be proposing to purchase was put on a national waiver list by the FAA and is now approved. So with that being on the list, and that being the only reason we didn't get the grant in the first place, I would be very confident in saying that we would be putting in for a grant and have it successfully granted. Again, 3 years.
Nevertheless, Randy, you're asking us to borrow $500,000 right now, irrespective of whether we get reimbursed or not. And that is going to, as I said at the beginning, end up with a fixed cost that if we get in a budget squeeze later this year, is going to be shifted onto, likely onto personnel. I just don't think that you've really paid attention to what we're saying.
Well, in all fairness, though, like, I mean, what's to say that that next year we're going to be out of this in general, and then what does that do to the city? At that point, if we're not maintaining these projects, money into these projects, what does that say for the future? How does that, how do we turn down that road construction, on Main Street? We have to, where's the $500,000 come from, Trafton Road? How do we fix this equipment that if we take the preventative measures to, replace and maintain them appropriately, then, how do pave the roads, next winter when we didn't bond for the money to replace the equipment that is used to do these things?
Any other discussion on this item? This was the motion just for the airport. We still have a lot of departments to go. I will take a roll call on the motion.
Councilor Morris,
Wait just a second, Nick. I think it's an amendment to the bond issue that Nick's proposed. Is that not correct?
Right, that's what we're voting. So just so we're clear, what we're voting on is adding $450,000 to the line for the airport to purchase the snow removal equipment. We're voting on adding that to the bond. Of course, we can always discuss that more later. And the overall bond itself has to be approved for that to be in there.
Adding that and reducing the 300.
Right, so the total for the airport would be $550,000.
Okay. Take a roll call, please.
Councilor Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
Councilor Mayu,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
No.
Councilor Frankie,
No.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 5 in favor, 2 opposed.
If it's okay, unless there's some major procedural issue with it, before we move as amended, can we just go through the rest of the departments to see if there's more amendments, or do we need to just? Is that all right?
Nick, do we have phone calls as well coming in?
I do have 2 phone calls in regards to the pool.
Okay.
And
As related to the airport.
We'll wait till we get to the pool.
Mhm.
And now we'll move on to the police, and I'll hand it over to Mike and the chief.
Okay, this has been a project that's been in the works for a long time. The proposed range is off the West River Road, across from the old Wyandotte Mill. It's a perfect site in many respects. However, it has some difficulties in terms of getting the right and proper elevations and material moved around on site, which we've been doing now for over a year. Last fall, the bond issue last fall had 100,000 in it for the firing range. We haven't spent much of that yet. We're proposing another 250. We think that would finish the entire project. Police need to be trained every year with firearms. And right now, and for a very long time, we've been going to Winslow for the training in a very substandard location. It's not a place that was ever developed for this kind of thing. It's worked for a while, but they've suggested that we probably need to find our own place. So we think we have a good spot, and we're working to try to make that happen. Rick?
Mike, so department request is 500,000, you're requesting 250,000, and you just said that the 250 would finish that project off?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it won't finish it off.
I may have misheard you, Mike. Don't get me wrong. I'm just making sure that I get it right.
I in fact did say that.
Okay.
It will finish it off until we figure out for the next bond issue what finally is needed. The thing we're lacking right now is a detailed cost estimate. We still don't have a final cost estimate, and that's because of the amount of material that needs to be moved on site. Until we can get DEP to approve our final shaping of that area, it's hard to come up with that final cost. So I told Chief Massey, you haven't spent the 100,000 that was in the bond from last fall. I don't see where you need 500,000 right now. Let's cut that to 250, and then the remaining amount would come in the next bond issue.
Mike, can you get me the plans for that range?
Yes, what we have, I can certainly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's still in a working stage, but we can show you what we have.
I'm in favor of this 250,000.
I'm just going to speak up on this one. I mean, I don't recall last year when we discussed borrowing the 100,000, it ever being mentioned that we were going to need to borrow more money for this project. So I'm just wondering what happened that all of a sudden we need another $500,000 to complete this project. And then the other thing would be, how long will it actually take to complete this project if it was fully funded? And since we're going to delay some of the funding for 2 years anyway, would it make more sense to spend the 100,000 we already borrowed and then wait until this is to save money in the bond? If the place isn't going to be done anyway, and we're going to have to borrow money 2 years from now to finish it, wouldn't it make money to delay all of the borrowing for 2 years? Or are we looking to get it just done enough so that it's sort of usable and then continue to work on it?
Yeah, well, just let me say that, of course, this project, as Mike said, has been in the works for a very long time. And initially, we thought that $100,000 would get us much further along than what we are. What we'd like to see, or what I'd like to see, is for the range to at least be at a point, developed to a point where we could at least use it. Because of the size of our department and the type of training that we really need to do, I mean, it's important that we have a readily available range, which we don't have in Winslow. And we do a lot of dynamic training that smaller agencies don't do. We do some situational, some move and shoot. We do some stacking, some obstacle, multiple targets. And that's very important training for us to do. And with the current range that we have, it's just, very inadequate. It's small. There are a number of agencies that use it, so scheduling becomes very, very difficult. It's really not accessible during the winter time, and we need that when we hire someone in January. By law, they're required to qualify. So in addition to all the type of dynamic training we do, we have that mandated yearly qualifications in firearms and with our handguns and our rifles that we have to do to meet the standards for the academy, or else the officer gets decertified. So again, we've been with the Winslow Range for a long time. We certainly appreciate them offering to have us use that range over these years, but very inadequate. And if we could get this range developed, at least to where we have one lane to use, that would be very helpful, very important. And again, we've been working on this for several years.
Do you think that once this is finished, will other police forces around in the surrounding areas be able to use it or rent it out?
Well, we've talked about opening it to the public, and I guess that's a discussion we'll continue to have. And
yeah.
I think there's a lot of unanswered questions before we really have some serious discussions about that. Is someone going to maintain it? Is someone going to be there so that when members of the public or other agencies come in, that there's oversight there? Mm-hmm. What's our liability to that? And what are the costs of opening to other agencies and the public? So.
Okay.
And I know that's really a long way off and complicated. So it's not something you can answer tonight, but I've always suggested, I think potentially it could help be a funding mechanism for maintenance of the range if it did interfere with the police use, obviously, to have like a Waterville gun club or whatnot. I mean, obviously we have a lot of firearm carriers around here. Guessing we're probably gonna have a lot more in the near future. It might just be a way that you could kind of run your checks and make sure you're getting responsible people. There'd be fees, like an annual fee or something like that. Again, I know it's a long way down. I'll be long gone by the time that conversation would happen, but I support this one.
Chief, so what would it take to get it at least to the point that you can do what you do in Winslow?
Well, I think if we could develop one lane, the plans currently call for two, would get us there, would give us the room and that we need to do our training on, particularly a lot of this other dynamic training that we do. So if we could develop one of those two lanes, and I think we could do that with probably the money that's been appropriated up to this point, the $100,000 bond from last year and the $250,000, I think would certainly get us there.
Are we paying a fee to use the Winslow range right now?
We are.
How much is that?
I think they charge us $600 a year.
600.
And so again, just this one is allocated for 20 years. So the payment on this is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000 a year.
Yes.
Plus,
but we don't know how much longer we'll be able to use the Winslow range. The range is very old. Each year it erodes more. There's not a lot of upkeep on it. There's a lot of agencies that are using that. They've already restricted us to the number of times we can use that and to the hours we can use it because of some of the issues that they're running into. If we get to the point where they say, we're sorry, we can no longer make the range available to you, where we go after that is, who knows? I'm not sure there is another option for us.
Do all the surrounding police agencies, they all go to Winslow?
Not all of them. Some of them do. Some of the local ones do.
Does anybody else have their own firearm range in the area? Is there another range even close to us or no?
Augusta has the Capitol range, which is used by Augusta Police, but it's also open to the public.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chief, is there an opportunity?
Hang on, there's a couple people talking.
Mike, go ahead.
Sorry. Is there an opportunity with the decline in the Winslow one is there an opportunity, and you know, the other municipalities that use it, if there's already a designated spot or whatnot, is there an opportunity for all of the municipalities or the agencies that utilize this to come together to, you know, put some money into this to make a range that would be used, you know, as it would today, and you know, we work on a better, you know, schedule for, you know, each of the departments, because obviously with, you know, with Waterville being in charge, they have the ability to, you know, set the days and times in which you can use it. But you know, if we have the ability to, you know, maybe partner with some of these other agencies and, you know, in turn municipalities, you know, that lowers the burden on everybody. Because, you know, what's Win going to do when it becomes, you know, inoperable for them? I mean, are they going to look to do the similar thing? And, you know, it seems to be, you know, maybe an avenue worth at least talking about. If, you know, we're going to do it and they're going to do it, you know, let's look at it, you know, maybe, you know, holistically together.
But Chief, this is a long-term issue. We're talking about bonding. I've already raised the problems that we're going to have in the short term this year because of the economic circumstances. Are you? Would you rather have the shooting range or the extra person in your dispatch unit?
I'm sorry, Counselor, I didn't catch all of that. Would I rather have a what?
If you had to choose, would you rather have the shooting range or an extra person in the dispatch?
I definitely need the extra person in my dispatch. That's something that's a must to have right now. I mean, we do have a range we can go to, but again, the need for us to have our own range, I think, is very important. It's kind of critical to our training. You know, whether you have some further discussions, whether other communities ought to consider sharing in that cost so they could use it. Again, that brings up a lot of other issues, availability. How would we use the range? How would we make changes?
So really,
I think for Waterville, obviously, for us, the best case scenario is for us, the city, to own that range so that we have control of it.
So what I'm driving at is this is a long-term project. Is it something that we can put off until next year in terms of funding?
I mean, you could put it off a year, but again, we've been working on this range for several years and put a lot of work into that. And we've had thousands of yards of fill that we were able to get for nothing by going to construction sites and asking them to provide us with the fill that they were otherwise going to get rid of someplace. And, you know, we've done a lot of bulldozing in there, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, obviously, to get that range to the point where we can use it. But it has been a long time in the works, for several years, from the time we identified the site to where we are right now.
Just for the sake of bringing some clarity to this, I'm going to make a motion and see if there's a second, that we remove the $250,000 for the range from the bond list.
Second.
Is there any more discussion about that?
Yeah, I'd argue you keep it if you're going to be voting for some of the other things on this list. I think our police should be a priority.
I think so too. Absolutely. I'd give them $350,000 if I had it in my back pocket right now.
I absolutely agree. The police should be a priority. And, you know, I mean, I'd
rather have more men on the street than the range, but.
And if you think that the police department is a priority, why did you offer that amendment? And it immediately a second. That you just contradicted what you just said.
All right. You're in the
Sorry, but that's.
I know. Let's just try to keep.
I'm on the council. I've advocated for more funding for the police department. So, you know, and that's manpower. Now, I have some questions about the immediate necessity of this range. And when we start talking about priorities and what we can and can't afford and all of these things. I mean, we're talking about, you know, they have a place to go at the moment. I'm not saying in the long term we may not fund this project, but does it make sense to fund it in the next, you know, in this bond when we could discuss it again 2 years from now? Let's also remember they have $100,000 in the bank that they haven't spent yet that they could use to get the project underway. You know, and so I think if we're going to have a discussion about what our priorities are, we have to talk about all of the things and what our priorities are and what we can and can't afford. And you know, I'm not 100% decided yet how to vote on my own amendment, but I thought it would, rather than just going round and round in circles talking about it, it kind of brings the decision to a head.
Yeah, we can't spend all night on every department. And we are going to have another discussion. So anybody want to comment on the amendment before we take a vote?
I just want to concur with Council Morris on the fact that I would like to see more agencies involved with the range. I think it would be a plus where Winslow is hosting Waterville and several others. I think we could attract a certain amount of agencies there, and we could charge rent in the same way that Winslow does. That would help offset costs, and I'm all behind having this range eventually, whether it's a weekend day, whether it's something for Waterville citizens that do carry guns that can go and practice and become a revenue source. I think, you know, I do concur with what Council Morris said, and I do think this is a good thing to do.
So how about this? I am willing to withdraw my amendment, but I think we should do the same thing with this range that we're doing with the pool, which is ask the chiefs to show us a business plan where the thing will, you know, somewhat fund itself. I don't think that's unreasonable. It seems to be consensus that we want other departments to be able to come in and use this. I don't think it has to break even necessarily, but I think we need to see that it's going to bring in some revenue. And if we're going to ask that of the pool and the airport and all the other city departments, you know, I think it's reasonable. We're not asking it of the police department. I'm just asking it of this range. Like, what is the possibility? Before I'm going to vote yes to borrow this money, what is the realistic possibility for this to generate some sort of revenue? And we should ask that plan. And if the chief agrees that he will at least show us some numbers on that, I would withdraw my amendment.
Just let me add that the more people that use the range, the more liability we incur for an accidental discharge, around leaving the range.
I don't think it necessarily has to be open to the public, but I mean, if Winslow is renting us out their range for $600 a year, the liability can't be that high.
I want to say two things. I'm going to say two things. One, I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to ask in the long run. However, I do think it's completely unreasonable to compare a necessary training function for the police department to a public water park. That's my comment.
I'm going to second Nick's.
Mayor, I do have 2 phone calls in regards to the police department.
All right, let's go ahead and read those before we take a vote.
Okay. The first one I have is from Julian Payne. I'd like to thank our local police for the great job they're doing under enormous pressure. I'm concerned about talk of defunding our police force. We have many issues in Waterville. We are a service community. We've had 2 shootings in Waterville in the South End. Working under this pressure with the threat of cuts is bad for police morale. I was going to ask the community to write to your counselors so this doesn't happen. But as experience has shown, this is a futile effort. If the police are unfairly singled out in next year's budget, I would hope that residents would rise up and appeal the entire city budget.
Was there another one?
Yeah, I do. So this one's from Dan Libby in Ward 4. For Eric, regarding the police funding, do you believe in defunding the police? And then he just called in And it says, why does Eric feel protecting our citizens is the same as going down a slide? That's all I have.
No, I don't favor defunding the police. I advocated very hard to get them an extra $150,000 in dispatch fees in the surrounding communities. And the chief knows that when we had that meeting, the first thing I said to him is that I hope in next year's budget, you ask for the position that you've been asking for all of these years. Now, I think funding positions is a lot different than funding a range. And we're talking about what we can and can't afford in the short term and in the long term. And I don't know, like the long-term goal of getting this range up and running, delaying it 2 years, you know, I don't think is going to be a deal breaker. And to Claude's point, if that meant, if funding the debt service on this range meant that he doesn't get a dispatcher, you know, we need to have priorities in all of our city departments. And I would certainly rather invest that money in personnel than in a range.
I agree.
I would say I'd like to see an extra patrolman added too. So that's going to be a discussion we're having before, which is actually, full disclaimer, before I take the beat down that I took before, that was the chief's original request. That's not me making this up out of thin air, people. But to anyone watching out there, to the public, I can promise you we are not going to defund the police. That's an absurd idea. So Eric, is this? I kind of want to move this item here. Are we voting on the amendment? Does this amendment still stand for tonight? You want to vote on this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we're voting on taking out the 250.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And so Sarah, I'm going to ask for a roll call, please.
Counselor Morris,
No.
Counselor Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Mayu,
No.
Counselor Foss,
No.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 4 in favor, 3 opposed.
Now we're going to move on to Public Works. I'm going to hand this over to Mike Roy and to Mark Turner.
Can I just say, Nick, that doesn't mean this conversation is over. I mean, we can discuss that again at the next meeting.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for everyone to realize. And frankly, I appreciate the thoughtful discussions happening on both sides. These are conversations that need to happen. So, but yeah, we're going to have another discussion in 2 weeks. And then there'll be the vote on the final bond. So all of these things are going to be up in the air until then. So it's important for everybody to keep that in mind. People have time to write their counselors and write to the city manager or whoever you want to and get your comments and thoughts out there.
I do want to thank the council and the mayor and the city manager for supporting the project up to this time. And you have bonded for the $100,000, so we'll do what we can with that for the time being. But again, I understand the concerns and where you're coming from. But again, thank you for working with me for the last several years to try to get this project completed.
Well, thanks.
Public Works.
Joe, just real quick, thanks to you and everybody in the department. We know it's super stressful and it's been that way for months. And we do have a world-class department. Everybody's just really incredible over there. I think we have the best department in the state. You're always ahead of the curve when it comes to training. I think people around the area obviously look up to you and your department for all the things you guys do, whether it's from Operation Hope to how you do your daily work. So thanks to you and everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for allowing me to do a ride along this weekend. It was awesome to see. Your department is exemplary. You do a fantastic job of being chief there.
Thank you. Great.
I think that's a unanimous sentiment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Mikey.
All right, Public Works, we're going to make this easy because we've already talked about 2 of the items, Trafton Road, Main Street. there's no other department that comes anywhere near close to the Public Works Department in terms of capital equipment needs. And what we have figured out over the years, when you look at the value of every piece of equipment that we own in Public Works, we would need to spend anywhere from $500,000 to $600,000 every single year to repair, replace, keep up with what it is that they use to do their everyday jobs. So I felt I was a little worried about cutting the equipment request in half. This amount of 585 is what Mark is about 1 year's worth. I wasn't sure when we would be going back for another bond issue, which is why Mark put in 2 years worth. But I have cut it to one, thinking that it may be a year or two at the most before we have to bond again. The last thing I'm going to say is, think of it this way. If you owned $150,000 worth of equipment that gets used every day, and the lifespan of that, I said 150,000, sorry. If you had 1.5 million of equipment with a lifespan average of 15 years for every single piece, you'd have to spend 100,000 every year for 15 years in order to keep up with it. The value at Public Works is way, way, way more than 1.5 million. And so that's why we're close to 500,000 to 600,000 every year in order to stay current. Mark Turner is also on board tonight. I'll leave it at that. But these pieces of equipment in the 585 are pretty critical items. 2 plow trucks I know are in there, along with a couple other items.
That's correct, Mike. Can everybody hear me okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. We have a carefully planned out capital equipment plan that we've used every year. We've been in this situation before where we've had to combine 2 years and extend over 2 years, but we can make it work. We'll prioritize the 2-year equipment on our list and replace the most needed items that we have.
Mark, you have the list. We talked about seeing the list of equipment that you wanted for both years, including what the cost of maintenance has been over the life. Do you have that? Did we?
Yes, yes.
Don't think I've seen that yet.
I forwarded it to Mike.
Did you send it to me, Mark?
Yes.
I'm sorry, then I didn't forward it along. If you could, don't rely on me, send it direct to the council.
Yeah, might as well send it to everybody.
You want to just go to the finance committee or the council first?
Everybody.
Everybody. Very good. Yes, I do have that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure how much we can really dig into that discussion without me seeing those numbers first. I'm all for funding the first year of equipment. I'd honestly, Public Works is the most, everybody consumes the roads and plowing, and it's the most visible use of tax dollars. And so I've always thought we should stay on top of our roads and replacing that equipment in a timely manner. So when I get a chance to look at that list, perhaps we can identify some other things that should be priorities.
Yeah, I want to follow you up, Eric, on that. No, there's no other department that does more with less than what Mark Turner has and his team at Public Works. And I'll tell you, the equipment he's asking for in plow trucks, I've never seen so much beating that those things take every single year, along with a lot of other different pieces of equipment, whether it be a sidewalk blower, whether it be anything, a grader, whether it be anything. I mean, I've never seen anybody do more with less than Mark Turner. And he has been beneficial to coming in with a surplus every year on his budget. Times pretty big ones at that. And his frugality and his concern and his what he does is nothing short of Houdini in some things with it when it comes to his Public Works department. I have to say it. And I'm totally in support of what is being presented here. I wish we could give you more of the equipment. If we didn't have to give, towards the Main Street build project, if we didn't have to do something with the Trafton Road, I definitely think the line of the equipment is the more important part. But again, we have to go through with the build, and we do have to go through with our obligations to the state and the federal level. So I'm in total support of that, and I'm in agreement with Eric on the fact that I would like to see the list of your equipment and go from there.
I'll send that out to everyone tomorrow.
And Sydney, thank you very much for your comments. Next
Yes.
week ends Mark's career here with the city of Waterville at the end of next week. And I agree with you, there's no one that's done a better job in terms of I've worked with, in terms of keeping us abreast of what the equipment repair needs are and trying to make do with whatever you can. So Mark's tenure will certainly be marked by the way he's taking care of the equipment and taking care of the city's streets, sidewalks, and everything else that ends up coming under the Public Works umbrella. Thank you, Mark.
And he looks like he's in the witness protection program. If you look
Right now, he does.
Thank you, everybody.
Maybe someone could make a motion.
Is there any discussion? Is there any motions on this for amendment?
Nothing for amendment.
Motion to approve.
I don't think we need that. We'll wait to the end for that because we'll have to move as amended. Parks and Rec. Micro.
Well, I think Matt is okay with the time being for taking a pass on the other two items that he had in his list in order to get the pool funding settled. Matt is connected with us tonight, so he can, if anyone has questions on what these two items are here, but obviously the pool has been the big topic of discussion. And we've said plenty about it, so I'm not going to add any more unless there are questions.
Well, can I just say, I really appreciate the discussion, folks. Of course, I like the support, but I do understand the apprehension. And I wanted to thank Councillor Thomas from, a few months ago when he suggested the budget plan. I think the budget plan is the way to go. We're making progress with it. It is a work in progress. And I wouldn't want folks to consider it my budget plan. It really is going to be our budget plan. We have a recreation committee for this reason. So, Mr. Mayor and all the council, I'm anxious to share the budget plan with you. That includes rate increases and some other potential revenue streams to get us to being close to breaking even. But like Mike said, and the Councillor Foss and others, it's really difficult to break even, especially when you consider the parameters from the foundation, and to include debt service makes it, oh boy, man, that makes it really tough. There isn't a municipal park in the state that does make money, that doesn't lose money. But I say we're the first one that doesn't. I mean, I want to get after this budget plan. I want to make the improvements to the pool and really do everything that we can to not lose money. Of course, nobody wants to lose money. The pool is a tremendous asset to the town. I know you guys all understand that. It brings families in, and I believe it keeps families here in Waterville, and it will continue to keep families living in our city moving forward. Yeah, working on the budget plan. I'd like to get the three councilors that are on it to endorse it before sharing it with you on the 7th, if that makes sense to Mike. That's kind of what my plan is anyways.
So Matt, just to kind of be clear, like my concern is if we go deeper into the hole. It's not, I realize this thing's probably never going to be, some get rich thing for the city of Waterville. My concern is that we don't end up putting ourselves deeper in the hole, because I think we've been pretty supportive of hovering at a smaller loss. when I hear that 50,000 and I look at the other infrastructure, it's more, I just don't want to get deeper into the hole. More,
I understand.
so you understand where I'm coming from.
Yep, I do. Well, I'm anxious for you to, with your background in finance, to really take a hard look at the budget plan. I'm anxious for anyone to chime in. It's not my expertise, but I have talked to, the folks in Portland and in Bangor. We met with Kim Lindloff a few times. So I think we've got a nice narrative section that talks about the history, what got us here, what we want to do to move forward. The rate increases that we're proposing are between 15 and 30%. We've heard suggestions from counselors on maybe, an incremental increases each year. I don't know that I'm in favor of that. I'd like to do something immediately when we have this new facility and wait 3 years and reassess. And really there are two of the biggest things that I'd like that we're going to add when and if we get this new pool is some strict guidelines on resident versus non-resident, because we suspect that a lot of people that have been using this facility over the years they're getting in under the less expensive rate. And advertising opportunities at the pool would be something we could do quickly and relatively easily. Charge $500 per sign, put it up on the fence. If we did 20, that's $10,000 a year. So I can't promise people things. I don't want to mislead people, but there are opportunities for other revenue so that we can cut our losses. Now's the time to do it, clearly. I'm not going to go into the details of why this summer is the time to do it. It's clear.
I'll chime in. Matt can tell you that I've also, since I was on the council the last time, I've always been after him to raise the rates at the pool. Honestly, I can't think of too many things that you can go do for an hour with your kid these days that cost you $4 or $5. And I know this isn't going to be a huge moneymaker for the city, but I do think we should, as much as possible, self-sustaining. I do want to say there is a big difference, in a bond payment and putting money in the bank for future maintenance. That's money we'll have to spend later on, as opposed to, paying back money we've already spent. And so, you have to look at those in different lights. And this is something we probably should have had in the plan for the pool all along, is that we try to put money aside every year. And I know we have to some extent, but we should have been more, so that we would have had more money in the bank, so that when it came time to replace the pool, we wouldn't be borrowing as much. And so I think we need to see more detail in the business plan. I'm generally supportive of the pool. I'm honestly not 100% decided on my vote yet until I see the final details on that plan. And I'm sure some other councilors feel the same way.
I'd like to chime in too with after you, Eric. Matt, I couldn't think of a better person, managing that and coming up with a business plan. Obviously, you have others involved in helping you with that, and I'm very curious about seeing that. The biggest sticking point for me, and I'm not going to debate that the pool is not an asset to the city, because I think it is. I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact how much it generates in the local economy for revenue, and just like the Quarry Road, that's another asset to the city of Waterville. A lot of people don't think outside the box, but the fact is that hotels, for the Quarry Road are packed. These are seasonal events. The Waterville Pool is a seasonal event. You don't pack hotels for it, but you certainly have camps unload, buses there, and you have other allocations of people that come there from all over the region. Because again, Waterville, there's only a few municipalities that fund a municipal pool. The biggest sticking point for me, in all honesty, Matt, is like the mayor said, is the attachment from Harold Elfond of how much money that we have to put aside every year. If we could minimize that to really be a frugal number, or be a number where we can dictate what we can and what we can't, because it's obvious, and like Eric has said, we should have been putting money aside, but we haven't been able to. We just have not been able to put money aside because of the fact that we're always staring at a budget that is ominous every single year. At least the 5.5 years that I've been on the council, it's been that way. And I'm sure, Eric, you can concur, they're the same, your budgets that you've seen over the years as well as I have are the same. So it's definitely something that's a sticking point with me. I'm not going to say I'm not going to support the pool, but I definitely, if that one thing that we can minimize and we can really have serious discussion with the L-Found about is that sticking point and that string attached thing that every year we have to put 50,000. That's way too much money for the city of Waterville to be, putting that kind of aside every year when, again, we have infrastructure that needs to be attended to. So that's pretty much where I stand on that.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Yes, and come back to what I've been singing all night, that the debt service is going to be there. We're going to have to pay it. We can't put it off. And as a result, if we end up short in the budget this winter, are you prepared, Matt, to lay people off in your department?
Thank
Of course, that's the last thing that we want to do. So no, I'm not prepared or looking forward to laying people in our department off. No, if that's the question.
Well, the question is, would you rather be able to keep your people or have the debt service required for with the bond?
Well, of course, I'd rather keep my people. Right, that's easy.
And I would really just encourage the people of Waterville to reach out to their city councilors to show support and how they feel about the pool too. Because I'd love to hear even more. I've heard a lot on Facebook so far.
Just reach out to express whatever your opinion is.
Yes, any opinion. Good.
And just to be clear, the payment in this year, as the bond sits right now, as proposed, is going to be somewhere around $35,000. And then next year it'll be $280,000. And so as far as this
How does that line up with what's coming off? I don't have that chart in front of me.
This year, because of what we borrowed last year, this year our debt service is jumping by about $200,000. That would be if we approve this bond. Next year, it would go up by $100,000 more, approximately 125, and then it would start to drop off. It would drop off by almost $100,000 the year after that. So
Also,
basically 2-3 years from now, we'd be at about the same level of debt service.
thanks, Mike.
There you go.
This is definitely one of the most important sheets to look at when we talk about this.
Absolutely.
Correct. So here's the year that we are in right now, 2020. Remember, these years refer to year end.
Yep.
So 2021 year is a year that ends June 2021. So for that, then that's the next budget year. We're going to be adding my $212,000. If we borrow 3.93 million, our debt service next year is going to go up 212. The following year, it'll only be 123. And then look at this line of decreases year by year by year by year all the way down. That's because we're paying so much down on these older bonds every year. You see how the numbers go down for all of them year by year by year by year. And so we are going to have 2 big years next year, 212, following year 123, but then you have the decreases.
But the reality is in the 2022 or 2023 or 2024 would probably be a smart time for the city to do another, medium-sized bond again, so that it doesn't have like $1 million jump at some point.
Right. Yeah, because what you want to try to do as much as you can is to keep this graph from the serious ups and the serious downs. Try to keep it level funding as best you can. I mean, that's very hard to do at times because you have other needs that might require a lower debt service. Then you try to catch up and you try to catch up and you lower it a little bit and then you're back up. So you try to keep it as close to this average annual spending as you can.
And that's precisely my point. We're looking at 2021 as being a substantial spike in the debt payments, and that's why I'm opposed to the amount of bonding that's been proposed. We're looking at going off over the deep edge in terms of debt at the same time as we're facing economic uncertainty in terms of our revenue and our ability to pay the debt.
Just to be clear, we're going to see a big jump this year, whether we borrow money this year or not, and that's because of our bond payment from the money we borrowed last year. The big part of that jump this year is from the money we borrowed last year.
That's correct.
Only 30,000 of that, 35,000 is from the bond we're proposing for this year.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right here is the amount for last year's bond. Yep.
So in order to, as we've been doing, to move the business forward, is there any motions that are being made to amend the pool line?
Yes, I'll make a motion to delete the pool bond from the list.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Is there, we've talked about this quite a bit. Is that a phone call, Sarah?
Yeah, I have several phone calls on the pool that I have, and the phone is ringing. I don't know if that's about the pool or not.
Let's go ahead and start getting through those. So everyone here has had quite a bit of time to talk.
Okay. First one is from Kathy Weeks. What Flavia said, the best way to bring kids to a pool is the Alphon Center, Best Western, or the lake. I have another one from Steve Soul. Regarding the pool, please remember that the investment for the pool provides a safe and happy place for hundreds of people a day. Just Wiggly Field in the pool, it will last for years, and you can't put a price on the kids' safety and happiness. I have Dan Libby. Are we able to deconstruct the slide and sell it to pay for the pool? And then Kathy wrote or called back in and said Bangor had the slide given to them. They spent $0. The pool opened 6 weeks out of the year. In this time of crisis, we should not be spending a dime on this.
Okay. Was there any other calls, or are we good for the pool?
Mary is still on the phone, and I don't know if it's about the pool. I do have other calls that relate to other things on the agenda.
Okay, I just want to make sure we wait 1 second. How's it looking, Sarah?
She's still on the phone.
Nick, I don't know that we're gonna, anything we hear is gonna change anybody's mind, so maybe we can vote and then
Yeah.
we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll get, sure.
We're going to talk about it again next week.
All right. We'll take a roll call on it.
What are we voting on right now?
This is to remove the funding for the pool.
Okay. Just making sure.
Counselor Morris,
No.
Counselor Oliveira,
No.
Counselor Smith,
No.
Counselor Mayu,
At this time, yes.
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
No.
Vote is 3 in favor, 4 opposed.
We are on to The fire department? Kick it off, Mr. Roy.
Thank you. I should have divided this 300,000 up into two items, one being the fire alarm, which I think is a critical improvement, a replacement, I should say. So it should have been 200 here, and the other 100 would be in the engine refurbishing. So those are my two items recommended. Chief Essler, who's on the line, talked with the Finance Committee meeting about the importance of this number here. When the Finance Committee met last week, building repairs at 180, especially the boiler, which is part of this 180. So I'll let people ask questions and I'll let Chief Essler respond to them. But essentially the 300 is here and in the engine refurbishing.
Maybe we can just let the chief speak to the importance of those two items first.
I agree. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for the opportunity. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. The first item, the priority item that I need in the fire department is the fire alarm system. Our fire alarm system, as I've said many times, has been in service in the city of Waterville since 1892. The city has made substantial investments over time to maintain our system. And what many people may not know is if you go outside and you look at a telephone pole, it likely has a red wire on it. And that red wire is our fire alarm system that runs throughout the city. We service or monitor, many businesses and municipal buildings throughout the city. We're in a position where our system is becoming extremely costly to maintain. It generally requires firefighters off duty to go out, climb telephone poles, rent bucket trucks, get the assistance of Public Works to repair wires. Specifically with the construction on Main Street and all the construction around town, it has wreaked havoc with our system. And oftentimes our alarm system has been offline for quite some time. I spoke with a Time Warner Cable gentleman who shall remain nameless, and one of his comments he made is, I've been cutting that wire for years. I didn't know it existed. So, you know, this is, a lot of people have no knowledge that we provide fire alarm monitoring services. I'm at a point as a fire chief where I either have to discontinue the system or consider its replacement. Discontinuing the system will of course require businesses to go out and purchase monitoring through third-party companies, which is done by a lot of our businesses throughout the department or throughout the city. But it will also require all of our municipal buildings, including our school systems, to go out and invest in outside monitoring as well. So the repairs, I'm proposing a complete system replacement that's wireless, that requires very little maintenance, if any. The advantages to a new system also include the ability to monitor burglar alarms. So looking forward, if we discontinue the fire alarm system, we have no opportunities in the future to generate any revenue and provide a vital service that we always have. As we move into a new system, it opens the doors to create a business plan with a reliable system that is better than most monitoring companies out there, for us to actually capture revenue. And revenue over time could essentially pay for the system, but it's really too early to discuss that. So that's the first priority item. The second item is refurbishing an engine. And traditionally in Waterville, when an apparatus meets its halfway point of its lifespan, which is 25 years, we generally will refurbish that vehicle. We've refurbished 2 vehicles in the history of the fire department. I believe Mike and Chief Fountain refurbished both of those vehicles, and it significantly extended the longevity to beyond 25 years for one of our engines. And we also did our tower truck to extend the longevity of that. So I'm proposing that before we get into a situation where corrosion takes over our frames, our paint, or any areas which similar metal come together, that we do a complete refurbish on that.
Chief, what's the replacing that piece of equipment if we let it continue to deteriorate?
Well, it's at its halfway point in its life, so it's about 13 years old. If we did nothing to this, we would be looking at replacing it probably around year 18, at the tune of 650,000. So
5 years.
It's although 100. That's correct. Okay. So although 100,000 is a lot right now, it significantly extends the longevity of our vehicles to preserve this vehicle essentially for another 15 years. What that involves is a pump rebuild, an electrical rebuild. The body actually comes off the truck. The frame is sandblasted and recoated and refinished. And then all of the paint on the truck is actually taken off in it. And all the corrosion is then exposed. Anything that needs replacement is replaced. And then the truck completely repainted along with light replacement. Any hole that's drilled into any metal is reinforced or coated. So it is an extremely extensive process. When we did the tower truck, it cost $100,000. I think an engine will cost less than the tower truck, but there's no way really to get an accurate figure on what it will cost. So I just went with the tower figure and said 100,000. So if this project is approved, we would consult with our local vendor that has done both of the refurbished before to get a good, hard, accurate number. But it literally will take them quite a while, and they need some kind of commitment to get us a price on it before we go down that road.
Well, I have two questions for you, Chief. Number one, what's the timeline that you're looking at in terms of replacing the fireboxes? And is that something that could be stretched out over 2 years, 1 year? And then secondly, can the refurbishing be put off until next year when we have an idea of what our finances are going to be?
I think those are both good questions. So the reason why, let me answer the fire alarm question first. The reason why I've requested 200,000 is because the receivers to receive the fire alarm signal through a wireless system need to be purchased now. It's going to be somewhere in between 100 and 120,000 to purchase those receivers. One for the dispatch center and one for the fire department, because you have to have a double redundant system to meet the current code to receive those alarms. So that's the initial investment. The remaining amount, assuming there are no overages, is actually money to replace the sending units in our municipal buildings. So for example, City Hall, our police department, fire department, any public works building that may have one, and I'm not sure if they do, and the school systems, I want to get those up and running as soon as possible on our new system. And then any issues that we run into on Main Street, I want to have a funding mechanism to replace that particular zone. And then over the next few years, we'll be transitioning from a wired system to a wireless system. But that initial investment really needs to be done right now and upfront. The second question, I apologize, can the refurbish be put off? The simple answer is yes, it can. It can be put off. There is no question about that. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. The longer we put it off, the more issues we run into and the more it may cost. And in the fire service, the cost of goods and repair increase 5% every year, 3 to 5%. Generally, it's 5%. So can we put it off till next year's bond? The answer is yes, we can, but are we guaranteed to bond next year? Are we guaranteed to bond the year after? One of the issues that I have that I raised is I had originally asked for $330,000 in the last bond to do this building repairs on the station. And I was given $150,000, which I extremely appreciate, to repair stuff like a leaking roof and leaking floors and damage done to the system, because I kind of inherited a little bit of a problem. When I went out to bid, after I had received some informal quotes, all of those bids came in higher than I was formally quoted because of our bid process. Therefore, $150,000 was right at the bare minimum that I needed to do those basic repairs. So I'm still waiting on $180,000 so that I can finish those repairs, replacements of boiler, you know, and those other items. So kicking a can down the road may or may not be a good idea, but I understand the times that we're in, and I certainly would answer that question appropriately, that yes, we can put off a refurb on a truck.
Chief, what do you think are the most immediate needs for the building repairs?
There are two things that are concerning to me. One of them is a boiler at approximately $65,000 to $75,000. My concern with that is that the secondary boiler that's downstairs is no longer get replacement parts for it. So in the middle of winter, because our station requires 2 boilers, if that boiler was to have a catastrophic failure, we would have to have a mobile boiler come in and service our station until they got parts for a new one. I would estimate that renting a second boiler in the middle of winter time that's portable and replacing that boiler would be in excess of $125,000. So that's concerning. And the second item, a part of that building repairs would be a humidifier. The humidity in the station, specifically the living quarters, is in the single digits, which comparatively speaking, the Sahara Desert is above single digits. So this leads for health concerns, guys coughing in the building, guys having dry throats, sore throats. I'm really concerned that wouldn't be funded. And it's really a safety issue that should have been addressed long before, but we simply just didn't have the money.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed the dollar number on that.
I'm not 100% certain. We're estimating in between 10 and 20,000.
Anybody else? I'm going to offer an amendment to add $100,000 to the fire department line for building repairs.
Second.
Is there any discussion before we take a vote?
Yeah, I think I'd like to chime in to Chief Essler, and I admire what you've been doing with the department, Chief, and your concerns are duly noted. And like I said, when it comes to the building itself, the city has an obligation to take care of public safety buildings. And this is an asset of the city that we cannot turn away from. We have to take care of it and be diligent about it. So I just want to commend you for your frugal efforts to identify the things that are most needed to do. So good job on that.
Thank you.
It sounds like the building repairs seem to be a little bit more urgent than the engine refurbish. Eric, would you be interested in switching the engine refurbish into the building repair line and leave the total for the fire department still at 300,000?
I would certainly entertain that discussion, I think, the next time around, if we see what changes in the rest of the bond. I mean, I think this is something I've seen in all the time that I've been on the council, is we kick these things down the road. They don't go away. It's basically like putting a bucket under the leak in your roof and calling it fixed, you know? I mean, we need to take care of these things, and the longer we delay them, the more they cost. And so, you know, the city's ended up costing itself a lot of money over the years by delaying these things that are necessary. And so I think for now, I'd like to keep both of them in there and then revisit that discussion at the next meeting.
My only concern is we did give the fire department money last year, and then he did have money left over. So I just don't know how much. There seems like more money going, but I do understand.
I would be happy to clarify that the money that was left over.
Thanks,
You'd
Sean.
like. You're welcome. So last year, we asked for 1.5 million. When I went out for our tower truck replacement, that is the most expensive vehicle in my fleet. There's no question about it. When after the bid process, in this case, the trucks came in at a lot lower rate than we had originally anticipated. Some of the trucks or manufacturers that originally gave us quotes didn't actually bid on it. So that drove the cost down, and it was actually $1,330,000 that the tower truck cost. In discussions with the mayor and the city manager, those monies could only be utilized for vehicle replacement. And that was my understanding throughout this entire process.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So we utilized $131,000 to purchase the ambulances, and we have about 50 to 75 and change. And I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, left over from that.
Okay.
So if we could utilize them for station repair, we do have a little bit of money there. If we cannot use it for station repair and it has to be used for vehicles, I would propose that we tackle the rescue equipment that's listed on this list here, because those would be considered vehicles, specifically a boat and an ATV that are 20 years old.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. Very good question. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Anybody else before we take a vote on the motion? All right, can I get a roll call on the motion?
This is Eric's motion to add money.
Yes, sir.
$100,000 for building repairs.
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Olivera,
There.
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Mayu,
Yes.
Counselor Foss,
No.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Thank
All
you.
right, we've reached the end. Could I get a motion to move this as amended?
So moved.
Is there need for any more discussion before we do?
Mayor, I do have a couple phone calls from previous departments, if you want.
Okay, let's hear them.
Yes. This one's from Jessica Beers. The pool has been a wonderful place for my family to go. Learning to swim is a huge skill to have and is a safe environment. I can't believe how cheap it's been to use the pool. I think you could raise the rates and families would pay. And then I have another one from Julian Payne. I'm disagreeing with some council members that this economy is rebounding next year, and I think they are gambling with a very serious epidemic. Portland alone is going to lose about 8 million Quebecers coming down every year, which will translate to serious revenue loss. When we're debating cuts to the airport and funding a pool, then we've lost our way here. And that's all I have on stuff regarding the bond.
I think we're ready for a roll call on the amended version of this.
And just remember, everyone, this is just the first vote. We're going to have a chance to discuss this again. So this really just moves it to the next meeting. Otherwise, we have to start all over again.
Mike, could you give us the amended total?
Well, we added 550 and took out 250, right?
Mike, we can't hear you.
It looks like it's 4,035,000.
That's correct.
No, we
You
added,
took out the police range.
It's 4,035,000. That is correct.
Yep.
Sounds great.
You added 250 to the airport, but you took 250 away from the police, and you added 100 for the fire, and so that's 100,000 more than what we had to begin with, and it makes it 4,035.
Thank you.
All right.
And just so I'm clear, are we voting on that total or just
Yes.
on the fire?
No.
voted on the fire department already.
Yeah, we're voting on total now.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Mayu,
Yes.
Counselor Foss,
No.
Counselor Frankie,
No.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 5 in favor, 2 opposed.
All right. I think this last item on the agenda, Resolution 141, 2020.
Resolution providing for a statement that Black Lives Matter. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as the municipal officers that whereas Black Lives Matter and whereas the Waterville Police Department has denounced the actions taken by 4 members of the Minneapolis Police Department during the murder of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020, and whereas the city of Waterville strives to be a welcoming city where all people can feel protected, included, secure, and safe. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the council joins the police department in denouncing police violence and brutality against Black people and affirms that Black Lives Matter and reaffirms that Waterville is a welcoming community, and therefore be it further resolved that the city council work with the police department alongside community leaders and advocates to understand the steps of the police department has taken and can take to provide effective public safety while ensuring accountability not only to the city council and mayor's office, but to the public as a whole and the community of Waterville.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion?
Can I go?
Yep.
Yes, I also submitted one to be read out too, because that's the one that was sent out the first time.
You'd have to just offer that as an amendment, Flavia, and then get a second, and then we'll read it.
Okay, so I'm gonna offer that as an amendment.
Second.
And what is the amendment?
I sent it via email earlier today. Pretty much it says this almost the same thing, just that it pretty much erases like racism and discrimination. So it would include that in the proclamation.
We should.
I would like that. I would like that read in its entirety.
Yeah.
Eric, you have that?
Do you have it?
Yes, I sent it out.
It's in our email.
That's
It's on
okay.
the email.
All right. It's a public meeting. Public needs to hear it.
Okay, so I'm gonna read hers.
Okay, yeah, she can read mine.
Okay. A resolution providing for a statement that Black Lives Matter. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as the municipal officers that whereas on May 27th, 2020, 46-year-old father of 2, George Floyd, pleaded for his life while handcuffed and on the ground while a police officer pushed his knee into George Floyd's throat for over 9 minutes, ultimately killing George Floyd. And whereas racism and death continue to plague our country despite many pleas for change, and whereas community members have peacefully marched through the city of Waterville in protest of these acts. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Waterville condemns the killing of George Floyd and condemns any and all acts of racism and discrimination. And whereas Equal justice under the law is a phrase engraved on a pediment in front of the United States Supreme Court. The City Council believes all law enforcement officials should work toward making this a reality. And therefore, be it further resolved that the City Council work with the police department alongside community leaders and advocates to understand the steps the police department has taken and can take to provide effective public safety while ensuring accountability not only to the City Council and Mayor's office, but to the public as a whole in the community of Waterville.
Can I just make a quick point? We'll just call it a Scribner's error, but the May 25th is the correct date. So at the beginning of that one, it says May 27th. It should say May 25th.
25th, yeah, the 25th. So yeah, that's what I proposed.
Discussion from the council?
So this would be the amended version?
Yes. And I feel that what it does, it's very, it's not targeting, because we do know that police brutality, it's happening across the board. So for instance, here, we can look at what's going on with discrimination against homeless, against gay, against different diversity. So it's not just looking at, I do understand that Black Lives Matters, but this opens up a discussion so we can look at what's going on in our city. So, and that's what it was added on, because I did take what Phil wrote, because I thought it was well written, but it just needed to be more inclusive. And I believe that Waterville is striving to be more inclusive. So I feel that this fits.
Thank you.
And I do have a few phone calls from that topic.
Phil is here too. I don't know if we want to let him speak before we go.
Yeah, I think we should give Phil a chance to speak too, if he wants to. Hey, Phil.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good, thank you. Thank you guys for letting me on the meeting today jump in to discuss the proclamation that I sent in. I want to thank the City Council again allowing me to jump on this call and speak about this resolution. This resolution is a call for affirmation that states that Black Lives Matters. We are in the current junction of our lives that at this country where we need to reaffirm our commitment to our Black men and women, that we hear them, we are with them in these difficult times. And as I mentioned to the mayor, Councilor Foss and Chairman Thomas, during the meeting that we had on Friday, this proclamation that I submitted, not the one that Councilor Oliveira just is trying to send through, it's not an endorsement of any organization, nor is it an omission of all other races and ethnicities that have also faced and continue to face discrimination and injustices. We are all with our oppressed people, but today we are asking for this city government to show our Black community that we hear them and that we are with them. I want to thank the police chief for his tremendous leadership. He's been great throughout the whole process, and all the city councilors who have reached out since the proclamation was presented. As a father who had to have a race discussion with his less than 10-year-old daughter because she was told she was not allowed to speak because she was brown. My story is the story of so many Black men and women in this country. And that is why I'm urging the city council to unanimously adopt the resolution that I submitted to show our Black men and women, old or young, that we hear them, we are with them, and we care about them, because that's the kind of community that we want to be. Thank you.
Flavia?
And I feel like we're addressing that with the title of this proclamation. It is a proclamation for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, the proclamation in itself, Flavia, again, like I asked you in an email that I submitted to you, I asked you what was the issue with the proclamation that I submitted. It seems like this morning, a new proclamation came about, whereas everybody was given a week to have a discussion. I had Councilor Foss reach over to have a discussion. I had I spoke with the mayor, Councilor Thomas, And we had a discussion. We were not able to agree on everything, but we had a very good discussion, I believe. And
Yeah,
I think that, and I believe that, you know, if you had some concern about the proclamation, which you still haven't clearly defined, beside the fact you say it's not inclusive, we, like I stated this morning, the Black people and Black men in this country have never claimed unanimous, they have never claimed to have the monopoly on police brutality. But the recent events that have been displayed in our country show that right now, at this very moment, the Black man and the Black woman in this country need our support. Just like a couple of weeks ago, the LGBT community needed our support, and we passed a proclamation in support of the LGBT community. So therefore, we did not come and say, because we're passing a proclamation for the LGBT community, we should also include the straight people. So that's why today we want to make sure that we, as a community, support our Black men and women, because we as a community have shown throughout the years that we support the people who are oppressed. And when a specific group is oppressed, that group is the group that we want to acknowledge and not try to dismiss their voice because we want to push out a narrative that says that we're letting other people without having the opportunity to even reach out to their constituents. You are my counselor, and not once I've heard from you about this issue beside this morning, which is unfortunate. And I wish that you had called or sent a message like Councilor Foss or Mr. Mayor did, because then you would hopefully learn that this proclamation is not about omitting any other race, omitting any other person and its ethnicity that is being oppressed. But this is to address this specific problem that we have today, which is a part of a larger problem, which is racism, which I agree with you. Your proclamation, you know, I said this morning to you in an email, which I'm still waiting the response, that it is not in any way, shape, or form an omission of any other race at all. But for some reason, you know, I haven't heard from you, and you have been absent in discussion and waited to the last minute to come up with a different type of a proclamation, which again, it is not a bad proclamation, but it's deterring from the message that we are trying to pass at this very moment. And it's unfortunate that you have not had the chance. You didn't take the time to reach out to actually try to discuss this.
Bobby, go ahead.
Okay, so I wasn't reached out. Nobody reached out to me, and as a African American woman, I feel I wasn't included. So you know what, we're gonna sit here and go back and forth. I actually included everybody in this proclamation, so I wasn't included from the start. It's so.
You know what? It's unfortunate you feel that way, right? Yeah. Because again, our movement is starting. I started in Waterville peacefully. We have started a coalition with the police chief. We met today, and we're going to be reaching. We're going to be.
Is there African American woman in there?
Excuse me, one at a time. One at a time.
It's okay. She can interrupt me. I will let her speak because it's okay. But I will not interrupt her while she's speaking.
I believe he had his time to speak on it. And also too, I feel like I'm being belittled because I'm African American woman. I can't be in the table. Why can't I be on the table with you guys talking about this?
All right, I'll get it.
You know, there's other African American people out in the community, constituent out in the community too, that wants to be involved. Like I know Michael Morris, I reached out to him because he wants to be involved. He wants to include everybody. And actually,
okay, excuse me. I would like to bring down the tenor of the conversation here. We can say all these same things.
Oh, my tone of my conversation is just that I'm talking a little bit fast. Yes, that is my culture. I am talking a little bit fast. I will come lower. It's not because my tone of my conversation.
Well, I just want to make sure that you're being heard, and I want to make sure.
Thank you.
I also want to make sure that, you know, I've been criticized in the past for not keeping that tone, and I'm working hard to do that over an electronic format.
Okay.
So may I respond?
Yes, sir.
All right. So if Councilor Oliveira would have taken 2 seconds to reach out about the proclamation or about any work that's being done behind the scenes, she would have learned that the meeting today was just a stepping stone in order to discuss what the coalition would be about.
That.
And therefore, we would have been reaching to members of the communities and other leaders to be part of this coalition. And if she had taken 2 seconds of her time, because she says that she wants to be involved, to reach out, she most likely would have known that in the coming weeks, people would have been selected to be part of this coalition. So her feeling not included is not the responsibility. It's not because the coalition has been formed and is having discussions. It's because Councilor Oliveira has taken upon herself to try to silence the voice of the Black man and woman in this community by passing a proclamation, all right, that waters down the message at hand. Again, we have had this discussion with many other councilors. This proclamation that I propose, it is not an omission of any other race and any other culture. It is not an omission or it is not an endorsement of any organization. It's a simple reaffirmation that Black lives matters. And because Black lives matters, we want to let our Black men and women and our children know that we are with them and we hear them.
I just feel uncomfortable with Phil coming on here and attacking Flavia.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can we keep this a little professional here?
Can I speak?
I'm trying to make it so you are the only one speaking. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I just feel uncomfortable. Flavia is your city councilor. You should have gone to her with your proclamation and worked with her. I think both of them are great. You guys are awesome. And I agree, Black Lives Matter, clearly.
I think Claude had his hand up for a while.
Okay. Sorry, I missed you, Claude.
That's okay. I've been enjoying the discussion. It strikes me that both of the proclamations are very similar. And I suggest that if you're willing to, we could simply add a couple of Flavia's whereases to your proclamation and get one that addresses everybody's concerns. In particular, I'm suggesting the second and third whereases in Flavia's, as well as the ultimate one where she says equal justice under the law is a phrase engraved on the pediment in front of the United States Supreme Court, which I think is a lovely sentiment.
I agree with that sentiment.
Second.
So I guess I'm not sure on the procedure because we already have an amendment on the floor and that's an amendment to the amendment.
Okay, so the first.
What I'm suggesting is merging the two documents by shifting a couple of whereases from Flavia's document into the one that Phil has written. If Flavia agrees to that, that would be the substance of her amendment.
Okay, can I speak real quick?
Yes.
One, to speak to Flavia's point, I understand maybe she feels like she wasn't included. The only thing I want to say is that every one of the city councilors was copied on the email that Phil sent with the original resolution. And the reason that I spoke with Nick raised some concerns, Rick raised some concerns. Nobody else really raised concerns to me. And so I encouraged Nick and Rick both to speak directly to Phil. And I believe that Rick facilitated a meeting that we were all part of last Friday to discuss this. And had there been other counselors who reached out to me, I certainly would have been willing to do similar. And so I don't want to get into pointing fingers or assigning blame. All I want to say is that it's an important conversation, and it would have been good if this conversation could have been had before the meeting between Phil and Flavia, perhaps directly. And I think I'm not without fault when it comes to this myself, but I think the mayor would agree to this. I do my best to try to disagree agreeably and to have, when we have differences of opinion, we try to talk directly. And the more that we can do that as a community when these things come up, the better. I wish that had happened I think Councillor Frankie's suggestion is a good suggestion. And so I would be in favor of that.
So to do that, I think we can either vote on Flavia's complete substitution, or Flavia can withdraw her motion and we can vote on a new amendment.
I'm not withdrawing my motion. It stands.
Okay. Is everybody ready to take a vote on Flavia's amendment to completely substitute her version of this for Phil's?
If we vote yes, then we can do Claude's amendment to that.
Somebody can still offer another amendment, but the easiest thing to do would be for Flavia to withdraw, either to modify her offered amendment or to withdraw her amendment, and Claude can offer his amendment that the language of the two be, that would save us a vote.
Right. So Flavia with the draw and then another amendment for Claude.
No, I'm gonna let my voice be heard.
Okay. I think we'll take a roll call on that, Sarah.
I do have some phone calls, and I don't know if you want me to read them before.
Yeah, why don't we let them rip?
Okay. This one's from Michael Mosley. Is there going to be a section under 2 resolutions regarding policing? My name is Michael Mosley. I did have input on one motion. I agree fully with Phil Bofia because Black Lives Matter. And then I have one from Kristen Price, Ward 2. I know myself and other constituents in this ward have contacted Flavia in support of the original proclamation. The fact that the only statements coming out of our city for our mayor are anti-Black Lives Matter, and the fact that Flavia has stated that the term Black is racist, I'm disgusted that they are trying to rewrite the proclamation without it saying anywhere that Black Lives Matter. And then another comment from Kristen Price. Nick made a joke about more gun owners in the future, and that joke is why Black Lives Matter. Because when someone calls the police, they are existing while black it is a threat to that Black person. Alluding to that, there will be more gun owners during a civil rights movement is threatening to people of color, because why would anyone need a gun during the civil rights movement? And I have one from Dan Libby, Ward 4. How is the last proclamation similar to the first one? Shouldn't it be postponed until citizens can read the new proclamation? In the initial statement, it states Black Lives Matter with a capital BLM. Is this the group, or are they referring to Black Lives Matter? If it is the group, shouldn't the town of Waterville stay away from a group that stands from defunding the police, also created by a self-proclaimed Marxist, and that also work with Act Blue that declares the only work with Democrat group? In the resolution that stands currently, it says that we should welcome all to Waterville. Isn't it redundant to say Black Lives Matter? Jessica Graham, Ward 2. I support the resolution that Phil proposed. If our police chief feels comfortable standing in front of the community to say that, then I would hope that our city council would also. Julian Payne, thank Phil Bofia for maintaining people under fire, and he handled very well amongst unprofessional counselors. And we do have the phone ringing.
I'm gonna say.
We can vote on the amendment, can't we?
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Morris.
I apologize. We've digressed so much. This is clear. This is nullifying Flavia's, correct?
No, this is to substitute Flavia's language for Phil's language. So if a yes would be that we're putting Flavia's language in.
Yes, okay.
We're leaving it alone.
Thank you very much. No.
Counselor Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Mayu,
No.
Counselor Foss,
No.
Counselor Frankie,
No.
Counselor Thomas.
No.
Vote is 2 in favor, 5 opposed.
Did you want to offer an amendment, Claude?
Yes, I would like to amend Phil's proclamation by including the second whereas and Olivia and Flavia's proclamation, which says, whereas racism and death continue to plague our country, despite many pleas for change. And whereas number 3, whereas community members have peacefully marched through the city of Waterville in protest of these acts. And I would also like to add the penultimate whereas equal justice under the law is engraved on the pediment in front of the United States Supreme Court. The State Council believes all law enforcement officials should work toward making this a reality. Did you get all of that, Sarah?
Yes, I did.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the on this amendment?
Actually, Mayor, if I could, I'm getting a message from Dan Libby. He would like the council to speak to his points. So Sarah, could we circle back just a little bit? Make sure that that's been addressed.
Yes.
He says it's in the form of a question. And why won't they answer them?
Is it the All Lives Matter question?
No.
It is Dan Libby's questions. I don't remember what the exact question was.
I believe he wanted us to delay voting on it if there's going to be new language. Was there another question in there?
I don't remember. That's why I want to reread on those.
Yep, his says, how is the last proclamation similar to the first one? Shouldn't it be postponed until citizens can read the new proclamation? In the initial statement, it states Black Lives Matter with capital BLM. Is this the group, or are they referring to Black Lives Matter? If it is the group, shouldn't the town of Waterville stay away from a group that stands from defunding the police? Also created by a self-proclamation Marxist, and that also work with Act Blue that declares the only work with Democrat groups in the resolution.
Bill, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can answer at least one of the most of the questions. Like I spoke in my initial statement, my proclamation is in no way, shape, or form an endorsement of any organization. I am not affiliated with Black Lives Matters. My resolution simply reaffirms the simple phrase that Black Lives Matters.
Thank you, Paul.
Flavia?
Going for the future, Black Lives Matters, let's include Black women, let's include Black everything, except for Black Lives Matter in your discussions going forward.
Can we answer the question about that Dan had talked about not giving time?
I agree with that too.
But as we've been aware of Mr. Bafia's proclamation, and I'm sorry, Councilor Oliveira, where yours has been struck down, are we missing an opportunity here, or did we not give due diligence to Councilor Oliveira's amendment?
And speaking out of that, the reason why I took long to reply is because I was really researching. I was really talking to people to really understand to what I was saying. It's not because I didn't reply back because I didn't agree. I do agree with that, but it's just that the way that it's worded, I don't agree with that. And I deserve time to actually research and talk to people about this. And that's what I did.
Anybody else?
Did we get a second to my amendment, or is that still in the ether?
And Phil, thanks for answering that. I actually had an email from a Brian Tibbetts in Flavia. He said he emailed you too. I talked to him on the phone today. He said he emailed you and hadn't heard back. I think his concern was that the city council was endorsing the group, which actually was the question I had for Phil last week. So Phil, I appreciate you clarifying that for us. Anybody else before we take a roll call on the Claude's amendment?
Do have 2 more phone calls that came in.
Sure. Go ahead, Phil, and then we'll take the phone calls.
No, I want to thank Claude, the Councilor Frankie, for the proposed amendment. You know, that is what this country and this community is about working together, reaching to constituents, and coming to some understanding. If Councilor Oliveira have taken the time to reach out, I'm sure we would have came out with some kind of agreement like we have just done here with Councilor Frankie proposing an amendment that could bring more substance to the proposed proclamation. And I really thank him for that. And I want to let everybody know that even though there's contention, there's always room for compromise. And this compromise here that's proposed by Councilor Frank is what this is about us working together to achieve a goal that's important for our entire community. Thank you.
And just for the reference, I left you my phone number, all my contact on their email, and I never received anything. And yeah, I do agree with his resolution. It sounds like what I proposed.
All right, so and I think there's a couple phone calls and we'll take a roll call on the amendment.
This one's from Kathy Weeks. We should be talking about all lives matter instead of Black Lives Matter, and the council should support that. Then John Graham, Ward 2. I hope the city council agrees that Black life matters. If Chief Massey can, then we should.
I'm gonna.
All right, let's roll call.
I'm black. I'm black, all the way black. My life matters. Just like my voice as a black woman matters too.
Sarah, we can roll call the amendment, and then if there's more phone calls, we'll listen to them.
Okay. Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Is there a motion to move as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I think we're ready for a roll call, final roll call.
Do we still have phone calls?
She is on the phone, yes.
We can
Okay.
read it after we vote.
What, Eric?
We can read it after we vote. Or we can wait.
I'm happy to give it a minute. I want to, because we're not meeting in person. If we were meeting in person, these people would have a chance to get to the microphone.
Agreed.
I just need to get a photograph like Sean Esler and just stick it on the screen like that.
He's very still.
There he is.
All right. This one is from Brian Evans.
Yeah.
Can each of you publicly say Black Lives Matter?
All lives matter.
I'm happy to say that Black Lives Matter, and I have to point out that I've been saying that for almost a half a century. I've felt I was raised in the South, segregated South, and while I've seen things like that, it's always been it's been appalling to me for years that we're still having a discussion. It's time for time for this country to move on.
Yes.
Black lives do matter.
Yes, Black lives do matter. That's nice.
I agree 100% that Black Lives Matter. And what saddens me is that in this day and age that we have to get a proclamation like this to say it, because it should just be automatic at this point. And, you know, like the fact that we have to do this and this thing that we have to do to recognize, you know, diversity and pride and things, like it should just happen. And, you know, human to human, regardless of, you know, the creed or the color or anything. It's sad that we have to go to this length to point this out.
Definitely.
Yes, and while I agree that all lives matter, it's particularly important at this moment in history to be clear that Black lives matter.
Sam, thank you, Councilor Thomas.
And I agree. Oh, who's going next?
Yeah, I just want to chime in. I'm on the same notion. I do agree with the All Lives Matter slogan because it really is a precedent over everything universally. But I do understand and I do recognize Phil Boffia for, you know, and bringing this to the forefront as a resolution that at the crisis that we have just witnessed is at the same time, I want to make sure that the police departments across the nation and across the whole world that, you know, there are unfortunately some bad apples in some of those departments, and there needs to be reform and need to be, you know, weeded out. And but at the same time, the men and women in blue are certainly, you know, I do want to be publicly saying that I do support them at the same time. We just got to recognize the fact, and I think Phil did that with great camaraderie and community with Chief Massey and the rest of the Waterville Police Department. And I think this is what really matters, is what this resolution is.
Bobby, do you want to go?
Yes, and yes, Black Lives Matters when we are all included. When Black women, Black children, Black men, Black youths, when we are all included, that's when it shows that we matter. Let's include us all in. We do matter.
I'm going to depoliticize this a little bit. Not that I think all of you have, but I think because of the organization Black Lives Matter, that phrase becomes very political and means very different things. Every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. Every single human being is completely unique and absolutely unrepeatable, and that does include Black people.
Man to that.
Call the question.
Great. Can I have a roll call, please?
Did we have another call? Was that it?
That was it. Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Mayu?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
And is there anything else in the agenda? I don't have my agenda.
Well, we're supposed to talk about the budget. I'm going to make a recommendation, perhaps, that we start the next meeting early.
Mr. Roy has his hand up.
Thank you.
I want to make a motion that we delay the budget discussion until the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Absolutely.
All right. July 7th There will be an item regarding a first vote, like with the bond thing. You can take a first vote, take as long as you want for a second vote. But I think it would be important to at least get the budget approval going.
Stay tuned because we are working on hopefully having some portion of that meeting be in person.
Excellent.
Are we meeting next week, or are we just out shopping for fireworks?
We're just shopping for fireworks.
Okay.
Be careful, it's dry out there.
Is there an official motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a great night, everybody.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.